What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today we are talking about Season 4, Episode 3, Hippocratic Oath. It has been a very big week on the channel. I guess I didn't save the new updated thingy. I did it. I swear I did.
Save what? What are we talking about?
Our episode title at the bottom there.
Oh.
Because I went and updated. I must not have saved it in the right place. But we're going to, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine because we're going to fix it right here this moment for you. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing good, Keith. Thanks so much. It's Deep Space Nine /current.ep_footer.png.
Yeah, that's the problem right there.
I'm doing good. I mean, the week did start with a weep, Keith, because you were having a rough Monday. Have things progressed better to this Wednesday?
I definitely feel better. I feel more like myself. The sun has sort of reemerged for the first time in like 5 days, which was I think it was getting to me. I think it was getting to me. But today I feel much better, and I feel much better partly because of the sun, partly because of how wonderful everybody's response was to The Visitor, our last episode.
Yes, people did love it. Keith, I'm joyous that the Philadelphia Phillies, my sports ball team, clinched a playoff berth last night, and it turns out that a week ago, a little bit more than a week ago, I got this like SeatGeek offer from some people with season tickets, and basically it was if the Phillies make the first round of the playoffs, which is the wild card, but they clinch home field so that they have to play it on their home field, they were offering tickets at a certain price, not playoff price, basically.
Right.
But that was a big if, so it was a bit of a gamble, but I did it, I gambled, and I won. So I'm going to Game 1 of the Wild Card Series next Tuesday. I'll be by myself. I'm going by myself. But
sure,
it's going to be awesome. 60,000 people plus, pumped for your team, pushing the red. It's going to be rad. I've never been to a playoff game before. Never been to a playoff game.
Really? No. In any of the major sports?
Any of the major sports. Nope.
Oh, man, it is great. It is so much fun.
I've
only ever been to a playoff hockey game, but oh my goodness, the atmosphere for a playoff hockey game is unbelievable. Well, that's great. Well, very happy to hear everybody's doing well. So I think because we have a lot to talk about,
let's get rolling.
Let's hop right into what you thought of the legendary Deep Space Nine episode, The Visitor. And so I've got a whole bunch to read here, so hopefully my voice will hold out because I have been recording demos all morning. So a little rough around the edges. It's going to be fine. I've got some cough drops here. It's going to be great. So last week, here is what you said. Joshua Cronin was our lowest rating that's not true. Second lowest rating at an 88. Next up is Jason Moe leaving us the super thanks, which means I read your message. Got a lot of them this week. Buckle up. Jason Moe says, I was finally able to watch the review proper, and it did not disappoint. As usual, awesome analysis, and thanks for all the personal insights you brought to it. Mike's theory about Ben being in a continuous loop slightly blew my mind. This episode hits me in a way that no others do. I cry every single time. Me too. It absolutely wrecks me in all the best ways. Thanks for the in-depth, thoughtful review. Find someone who looks at you like Ben Sisko looks at sleeping old Jake.
Words to live by.
Seriously, that is some damn truth. All right, so we brought this up last week because YouTube viewer, not a fan. And so before we get into a lot more lauding of the episode, here is the pre-buttal about The Visitor from YouTube viewer. Excellent Gowron, my Gowron last week, by the way, though I half expected you to shout Avada Kedavra and try to kill Harry Potter. Fair. I am probably the only person on Earth who doesn't like The Visitor. I feel like Mugatu yelling frantically at Zoolander only has one look. I usually skip this episode, but because you guys spoke so highly of it, I watched the watch-along with Mike and Jen. I don't believe the episode is bad, but I do believe it is the worst episode of Season 4,
Wow.
which still makes it better than a third of Season 1. So here is some reasonings. The guest actor playing old Jake was good, and the emotional beats are good, but there are a lot of problems with the episode that stick in my craw. So we have an itemized list of problems stuck in YouTube viewers' craw. 1. The biggest thing I like about Star Trek Deep Space Nine is the serialization, and everything built on top of each other. If you look at this episode, if you took this episode out, nothing would change moving forward. This is my number one gripe with this episode. 2. Make me live! Modern media in general has a recurring problem of not making death stick. Reversible deaths are a hack storytelling tool, in my opinion, but don't take my word for it. There's a YouTube link there to many more examples. Should I rebut these as they're happening? I think so.
No. We talked for 2 hours about this.
Yeah, fair enough. 3. The technobabble was weak and contrived. In general, I do not like Star Trek episodes that rely on technobabble, and I find time travel episodes worse. 4. Where was Colin Meaney? He was doing a movie, actually.
Yeah,
O'Brien,
we do know that.
We do know that. O'Brien is the guy who pulls a rabbit out of his hat on the technobabble episodes, and Jake is closer to the O'Briens than he was to the rest of the Deep Space Nine crew. That's interesting. 5. This conflicts with Jake's character, who is pretty resilient. Jake should be prepared to lose his father because he's already lost his mother, and his father has a very dangerous job, and he is a puppet to the Bajoran prophets who do all sorts of weird crap to him. Also, much like how Dr. Bashir can single-handedly cure deadly diseases in a couple of days, Starfleet has the counselors and therapists far beyond what we have today, and Jake has his grandfather and his aunt who we never meet on screen, and he has Nog, Bashir, Kira, and O'Brien's. I cannot imagine Jake would throw away his life mourning, especially with his father imploring him not to do that. I mean, it's his last parent. I would not just toss that off. Anyway. 6. Semi-spoiler warning. This episode contradicts a lot of prophets-based plots. Among other things, the prophets are near omniscient and can prevent this. 7. Semi-spoiler warning. The episode contradicts a lot of the ongoing Dominion plots and would not have stopped by Cisco disappearing. Well, we don't know that. Butterfly effect. 8. Semi-spoiler warning. The episode contradicts some of the Ferengi subplots, which also would not have been stopped by Cisco disappearing. Of all the future stuff, the Klingon thing doesn't make too much sense. Too many little things to mention. 10. Euthanasia was apparently okay when humans do it, but not Klingons or anyone else. Star Trek cannot pick a lane on this one, nor are they consistent to leave the issue open. I think that's more of I don't think he cleared it with anybody. He just did it. 11. On this episode could have been fixed with a 1-minute scene of Ben Sisko recording a message for Jake or having a private talk with him and asking, if I die, don't throw your life away in mourning. Yes, although do we always just do that because people tell us to? Another thing that would have helped continuity is if young Jake could start dating the Bajoran he eventually marries and Ben cannot stop grinning. Your review made me appreciate this more. 65 out of 100 stem bolts. I don't hate this episode, but I don't think it should be ranked among Star Trek's best. Very interesting points. I think valid. All right. On the other hand of the scale, Delusions at Noon comes in on the opposite scale. I give this one 100. Also, leaving the super thanks. That's why we're reading them. I give this one 100. Not just great Deep Space Nine, not just great Trek, but one of my favorite episodes of TV ever. Up there with my favorite episodes of Twilight Zone, The Prisoner, Twin Peaks, The Wire, etc. No, despite the 100 rating, it is not perfect. But I don't intend my ratings as measures of how close to an episode is being flawless. They are very tightly constructed episodes I'm just mildly positive on, and ambitious, incoherent messes that I adore. Agreed. My rating is rather a measure of how deeply and intensely it affects me, and I still remember being destroyed by this episode when rewatching it a short time after my father died. None of its small problems with the old age makeup or the occasional broad performance choice or the ways it arguably doesn't quite line up with future continuity, though I don't find it too hard to think through some headcanon that makes a perfectly credible alternate course for the Dominion War. Effect that is what fundamentally works here. From Tony Todd's, I don't let those things affect what fundamentally works here. From Tony Todd's monumental performance to Avery Brooks' final shattering line reading. I'd even go so far as to argue that the clumsy hamminess of Siddig's interpretation of old age accidentally helps put into relief how truthful and deeply felt Tony Todd's turn really is. Anyway, great art is seldom perfect. Greatness often emerges from the miraculous, way more imperfect parts often emerging from the miraculous way. So many imperfect parts can, on rare occasions, amalgamate to the greater whole. And while in some ways this episode is a standalone, I do think that it is greater on rewatch, and I have lost my part. That's because I resized and then it's all gone. Yes, I do think it gets even greater on rewatch as the relationship between Ben and Jake continues to grow and change, and as its themes and images end up echoing all the way up to the series finale. So yeah, I'm comfortable handing out a 100 to The Visitor, a peak not only of Trek, but of television storytelling in the network TV age. Agreed. JD comes with a 99, Harry Pothead with a 90, Bryant Kimball Beersock with a 99. Want to send my best wishes out to you, Bryant, and your whole family. I was going to ask if I could read your comment online, but that's none of my business. But I did want to say that I very much am feeling for you.
Yeah, a lot of folks, Brian, first and foremost, but we just heard from another viewer.
From Delusions, yeah.
Yeah. Shared their stories of losing a parent or grief in some sort of way, some on YouTube, some in private patron messages. And it really highlighted for me, Keith, once again, I won't go too far into the weeds here, that media can help us with shared emotions, be them jubilation, be them grief. And I think we're spoiled now because of the internet in that shared experience. We can tweet, we can leave a comment, we can basically in real time engage with media and other fans of said media. That didn't exist as much on network television back in the day, because if you were lucky if you missed something to catch it on VHS before it would loop around or a DVD got released or whatnot.
Right.
And so this is a cool experience to get to revisit a lot of this media, or for some of us watch it for the first time, with a collection of folks, with an audience, with a community. And listen, I often feel a little bit of vulnerability sharing some of my personal stuff. I know, Keith, we've gotten a little better at it over the years since we do it so often now. But we appreciate the confidence that you share with our community when you're dealing with whatever the feels are, whether you're passionately for an episode or against it. Always feel free to write an email, leave a comment, let us know. And if you want us to share it, we will. If you don't want us to share it, we won't. It doesn't matter. Just want to let you know that I see you, we hear you, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is the greater purpose of not just media but art. Is to express our shared emotions, express our shared experience, our feelings, and to try to find ways to interpret what we all go through, the human experience, both through direct storytelling and allegory. And Deep Space Nine is a little bit of both. And I think that is part of what makes it great. So best wishes to everybody who has lost a parent, but especially to Bryant, who has done so very recently. Continuing on, Worf's Boot Shivs gives it a 97. Kevin Miles with a 99. Rowan Talmadge, welcome, with a 99. Sans Deity with 101. And another incredibly generous super tip. Here we go. Sans says, I'm so glad you guys enjoyed Keith and Mike watch season 1 of Deep Space Nine out of context. And Mike, a special thanks for saying great close, because to be honest, I was really proud of that and hoping one of you would appreciate it as well. Now, on to the episode. I apologize that my comment will be a touch longer than usual, and I've upped my tip as a consequence and as payment for Keith reenacting the Gowron scene. Wow, I think I could start my own theater troupe here. Because this is one of the most emotionally resonant episodes in all of TV history for me, and I have things to say about it. Oh, and it's the first episode I ever taped on a VCR using a timer, hoping it worked. I mean,
I remember specifically that time because, listen, now DVR, you're pissed off if you miss 1 minute at the end of the game.
Oh my God, no.
But back in the day, there was a Rube Goldberg situation. Timer, you had to hope you set it to the right long play. You had to estimate, do I want higher quality to put it on EP or what was the first one? LP, SLP, and just like hope it lasts just 2 hours, or do I put it on ESA or extended play and it will record 6 hours, but it'll be real shit quality. What do I want? Will the timer work? Will someone stop the TV? Well, there was too many variables.
No, I honestly, I think successfully getting something recorded on a VHS with a timer is like the equivalent of like hacking the nuclear codes.
100%.
It was absolutely terrifying.
The only positive, Keith, I think you'll agree, the only positive to that period of time was that you had it not foolproof, but an easier chance at avoiding spoilers if it was like a sports thing you were taping.
Yes.
Easier. Not easy, easier.
My grandfather spoiled a Giants game for me in 1995, and he's no longer with us, but I'm still pissed.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not talking to that son of a bitch.
No, screw you.
He came to visit me. He apparated in my bedroom, and I still refused.
Exactly. All right. So, Sans continues. Yeah, kids, we had to be there when our shows aired or depend on a timer on a VCR the size of Rhode Island to tape something. Yes, I think I had the Temptations TV movie on the same tape, which is an awesome movie if you haven't seen it.
Great movie.
Oh, I haven't seen it. Interesting. Growing up, I did not have a good relationship with my own father. He largely ignored me and treated me as a nuisance, and when he didn't, and this episode came out right at a time when I was really in a bad place emotionally with my father. This episode really hit me because of the tight relationship between Jake and his dad, something I wish I had. So I feel like the Ben-Jake relationship was something I held on to. So to see Jake lose his father was very jarring and felt like losing an idealized version of my own father. This episode has always hit me very hard, even though you know that in the end they'll find some way to save Ben and everything will get reversed somehow. It doesn't change the emotional hit that 13-year-old Sans deity took. This is the first piece of media that made me cry. After Free Willy, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, made me cry too.
Hold me like the river Jordan, and I will then say to you, you are my friend, but I'm only human. What a great banger Michael Jackson made for that movie. Go check it out.
I don't remember.
Oh, so good.
Anyway, Michael Jackson can go to hell. Anyway,
could be there already, Keith, for all we know.
With any luck. So it was my first real brush with fiction really affecting me in that way, and I've held on to it ever since. I named my son Benjamin, and if I had a second one, he would have been Jacob, largely because of the father-son dynamic in this episode. Honestly, I can see why some people can dislike this episode. Normally, the strength of the show is in its serialized nature. What happens in the past continues to have an effect on the present and the future. This episode is the antithesis of that, because nothing that happens in it really matters in the long run of the show, except to showcase the bond between Jake and Ben, which I think is important, why it doesn't make this a complete throwaway storyline-wise. I also think, this is Keith again, Ben remembers this. So I think this affects Ben's thinking moving forward, his emotional experience. I think this might affect how he raises Jake in the future. It might affect choices that he makes. I think it doesn't. I think it doesn't exist in this bubble of space that doesn't have an effect on anything because of his emotional experience of this. And who knows what else he learned about what the future might have been and perhaps influenced how it moved forward.
And I would guarantee you 100% that the experience of filming the episode and making some of these choices and consequences and decisions in the moment, in the room, on set, affect Ben's or Avery Brooks' performance moving forward in even the smallest subtle ways.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry. Sons continues, and I agree with Mike that the future versions of everyone but Nog are just not great. I admit that this episode does have flaws, but the entire point of art is to make you feel something deeply, and that episode succeeds beautifully here for me. Just as a magnificent painting may have a few flawed paint strokes, this episode isn't perfect, but it pulls on my heart and doesn't let go. So my rating for this episode is inflated in a way, but damn it, it's my rating. The scene at the end between old Jake and Ben is extremely powerful, and I cannot think of a more poignant moment in any Star Trek show or movie. With all due respect to Leonard Nimoy, Avery Brooks' warmth and happiness to see that what Jake has become is enough to make me cry, and then when his counterparts, when he counterpoints that with the pain and sadness to see Jake dying, I completely lose it. I'm tearing up as I'm writing this, in fact. That scene is my favorite Avery Brooks moment in the show, and the scene in all of fiction that has affected me most emotionally. Bravo. But I have to mention my one gripe with the episode. As great as it is, I am saddened that the best Jake episode in the series and the best acting done by a Jake is all done by another actor. That's fair. It's Tony Todd who creates all the emotional moments with Avery Brooks. It's Tony Todd who does all the heavy lifting, and Sarah Clofton may as well not even be in the episode. I understand why they did it this way, because obviously Sarah Clofton is just not as skilled enough for an episode like this, but it's just unfortunate that all the flowers for Jake's storyline go to an actor who isn't Sarah Clofton. That is something I won't forgive. I bulge or forget! But this gets 101 self-sealing stem bolts, and hell yes, they're self-sealing, in and out of context. And damn, next week is Hippocratic Oath. Looking forward to season 4. List, I forgot how many goddamn bangers there are. This is going to be a fun-ass season on Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Kapla! Whew! Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for sharing all of that. That's a lot of personal stories and vulnerability, and I very much feel honored to have that all shared.
Let me say it. I'm gonna humble brag here, Keith.
Yeah.
Look, there are channels out there, millions of subscribers, making millions of bucks. And don't get me wrong, I love that. But to get just 5 of those types of comments a week, hell, just one of them, insightful, informative, conflicting, yet interesting in their differences,
intelligent, well thought out.
Like, we have put together a pretty cool little community. You're going to see the Patreon is growing too. People are watching along with me every week. It's really just, I am humbled. It's special, and we do not take it for granted. We never will. We don't now.
Indeed. All right. Well, this is why we have chapters, folks. If you wanted to get to the episode, now is your time to talk about Season 4, Episode 3, Hippocratic Oath, which aired on October 16th, 1995. We were still listening to Mariah Carey's Fantasy, Mike.
Ooh, Fantasy baby, we're running out of time, so let's just get to it.
The top movie, What's in the Box, continued to be 7 in week 4 of its top of the charts. All it took to be the top movie in October of 1995 was $8 million, if you'd believe that. So we know what's top of our hearts, the top movie, the top song. What was on TV this night?
Nothing to note, Keith. I will say that there was a show called Ned and Stacy, and I'm forgetting, what was Ned and Stacy? It was on Fox after Melrose Place.
I didn't have Fox at that point.
Okay. Well, I guess the only other thing of note is that your Denver Broncos, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
Shut out the Oakland Raiders 27-0 on Monday Night Football.
Ooh.
Never forget. 95. Who would have been? It would have been Al Michaels.
It was
Dan
Dierdorf and Frank Gifford.
Frank Gifford.
And I bet you that's John Elway for the Broncos and Jeff Hostetler.
Wow.
For the
Sports
the
ball!
Oakland Raiders. That would be my guess. All right. What was Voyager doing? Well, they were doing the episode Parturition, which is the episode where they discover an alien baby. And we told it on the Patreon, but I believe... you know what? I think Jim just let me believe this, but I choose to continue to believe it, that is the only piece of Star Trek history that I personally, Keith Varney, had an influence over. So by helping Pitt choose the pitch of the alien baby's cry one day.
A promise that was made, never kept, which added to the list, but I still am pushing for because I wanted. So Keith has two members of his family who worked on various treks in the sound department, his brother being one of them. There was chat that we could maybe get your brother for a Patreon exclusive little chitty chat about his experience working on the show. Is that something we could still do, maybe?
Oh, yeah. No, he's 100% on board. I've just been too lazy to set it up.
All right, there you go.
So
manifesting.
So there it is.
Manifesting.
We'll manifest it. We'll manifest it. All right. We should definitely do that. All right. So the, if we were thinking about the, how heavy this last episode has been, and we're like, you know what? I really want to take it out on my enemies. You could do so with a weekly world news headline that teaches you how to put a curse on your enemies and ruin their lives.
Sorcerer and something author Damian Mulkin, does it say?
There's no way I could read that from here.
I tried.
He looks like a wrestler. It could very well be a wrestler. So there you go. If you're curious how to put a curse on your enemies and ruin their lives forever,
subscribe them to this channel.
Get them a life in musical theater. Tell them, yes, that's a good way to spend your life.
Oof.
Oof, oof, ooh, hit some truth. All right, so the Hippocratic Oath was directed by none other than René Auberjonois. Auberjonois! We've learned how to say it now.
Now, Keith, in my own little bit of trivia.
Oh, let's hear it.
I learned that René was a little flustered because he was supposed to direct The Visitor, but Colomini,
right.
So talking to our friend YouTube viewer, Colomini actually was booked on a movie role, so they had to shift these episodes around so Colin could do his Colin O'Brien-centric episode, and René had to direct it a little underprepared.
Yeah, well, they flipped directors. Oh, TV, how scary must that be? All right, so this episode was written by Lisa Klink, who did the teleplay. This is Lisa's only episode of Deep Space Nine, but became a staff writer and editor on 74 episodes of Voyager after this. And Nicholas Correa, who this is also his only episode of Deep Space Nine, did one episode of Voyager with Lisa. So now I think it's time for something trivial, Mike.
I agree with you, Keith, but can I indulge you for just a second?
Sure.
Okay, hold on. Let's see if I can find it here. You've been waiting for some more cat content. How cute.
Oh, cat content!
How cute is my little man?
What's up, DD?
Good boy.
Oh.
What a good boy. You want some trivial trivia? Okay.
Yeah, you want some trivial trivia. Now, Keith, waste your time with trivial trivia. Okay. So, hold on. If we're going to do that, we got to do... There's Charlie.
Oh, Charlie. Hey, buddy.
Good, buddy. Thank you for sleeping through the episode and not, wanting to type things. His new favorite thing is to now type things into the scripts I'm working on. It's pretty annoying. All right, so trivial trivia. The role of Garan Agar is played by Scott McDonald. Mike, do you remember who Scott McDonald was?
Wasn't he Tosk?
You read it. You read that ahead of time.
I did read it. I just couldn't wait to blow your mind.
For a moment, my mind was blown. I'm like, nope, I don't buy that for a second.
I give
Don't
it
buy
just
that
enough
for a
pretend thinking.
It was a good performance. It was a very good performance. But unfortunately, I know you're a liar. So there it is.
Come on, buddy. Come here.
All right. So in an interview with the official Star Trek website in 2011, Rene Auberjonois thought this episode was one that stood out the most for him out of the 8 he will direct throughout Deep Space Nine.
That's pretty good. 8. Pretty good.
Yeah. Scott McDonald, who the aforementioned Mike, do you remember who he played?
Scott McDonald?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Who was it?
I have no idea. What are we even talking about?
It's the same guy. You had it teed up, but it was gone 10 seconds later.
Jen sent a text. I started reading it.
You were so proud of yourself. You're like a goldfish over there. You remembered it once. Then it's gone.
What? Who? What are we talking? What are we doing? Ginkley?
Oh, God.
Oh, that was funny.
He appeared in... Scott McDonald has appeared in all of the Star Trek television spin-offs, at least up until the new Trek. His most frequent Star Trek roles was that of the Xindi reptilian Commander Dolim during the 3rd season of Star Trek Enterprise, but he also played the roles of Tosk on Captain Pursuit, Gornagar in this episode, Sub-Commander Nivek on Next Generation, Face of the Enemy, and Ensign Rollins on the Voyager episode Caretaker. Dude made a good impression, clearly. As Lisa Klink had recently completed an internship with the staff on Deep Space Nine as a writer, she was given a chance to write the teleplay. Klink wrote the 1st and 2nd drafts, and Ronald D. Moore provided an uncredited polish. And Klink was pleased with Moore's work, calling it great. Mike, you want to know what else is great?
I can't wait for you to tell me, Keith.
It's our patrons, and I can't wait for you to tell me all about that while I rest my voice.
The Patreon is growing. We have a family that's filling the slide. And you know what, Keith? I want a second slide. That's what I want. The aforementioned Bryant Kimball Beersock, Casey Clark, Jason Moe, Joshua Cronin, Andrew Hayes, Jorge Navoa, and the mysterious Worf's Big Ol' Boot Shivs, Charles Babbage, Richard Coleman, Harry Pothead, Peter Benke, CRM Productions, Nikolay Ivanovich Lobachevsky, Delusions at Noon. Yeah, let us know, Peter. Steve Brown, YouTube viewer James Hubbard, Lisa Kislov. Welcome. JD Makes, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell, CRM, Pat, and Joshua Cronin. They sent us stuff in the mail. Check out our last episode of Star Trek Toys. Even if you're not a usual viewer, it was a really fun episode where we opened some mail. Next week's fun, too. Keep checking it out. Toys is back, y'all. And it never went away. The patrons get to watch me watch every GD episode of everything, sometimes in my jammies, sometimes half awake, but always having fun with the patrons. We do Ask Me Anythings, which we owe one now, Keith.
Sure do.
We got a lot of fun stuff in the makings. We're going to do we did a family viewing, I should say, of Star Trek V, and me and Keith have something in the works for spooky season. We're going to come up with something, be it Trek or otherwise, to watch in real time with the patrons, which I think will be fun. We had too much fun last time, so
we really did.
We're gonna eat candy, and I have all kinds of fun this time. So jump in. Most importantly, it's just a great. If you think the comments here are incredible, they're really good on the page usually, and there's a patron RSS feed where you get all of our stuff in podcast form, just in one drop. But mostly you're become a producer of the show, so you can tell us what to do. And you get our undying gratitude. So patreon.com/KNM.
And what we decided to do, because we had all of these tiers and we never felt right about like walling off our content. All of our content is available on every tier.
Including $1.
Including $1. And because we don't want it to be sort of financially exclusive. There are some people who can afford more. There's some people who can't. And so we don't want it to have sort of like a financial exclusivity thing. Mm-hmm. So go in there, contribute whatever you care to, whatever you can. Everybody gets everything, because I just think that's more Star Trek, right?
Yeah. And you know what?
So-
If you are feeling like you'd like to give more from your, you know what? Maybe find a friend and get them a subscription too. I don't know how you would do that, but pay it forward. That's what we're all about here.
Yeah, indeed. All right,
Yes.
so back to Hippocratic Oath. Our guest stars include Scott McDonald. Do you remember what he was on before?
Wasn't he on Tosk?
He was Tusk as Goran Nagar, Stephen Davies as Aruk Taral, Jerry Roberts as Mescal Klan, Marshall Teague as Temozuma, and our co-stars are Roderick Gar as Shady Alien and Michael H. Balius as Jem Hadar 1. All right, we are now, 45 minutes into this? Let's go to our screening room, shall we?
Hold me to be with my brother. Keith, you're very tall. I'm very short. Let's meet in the middle.
I mean, well, look, you may be shorter, but I'm fatter, so it's all it all evens out in the world. Okay, so in our teaser, Worf sits in Quark's bar staring at an alien who he suspects of being a smuggler. Quark is like, so what? We have a non-discrimination policy here, but Worf is clearly not thrilled. Kira then comes up, and Worf asks why Quark isn't in prison. We've asked that question ourselves a few times. But Deep Space Nine is a very different place than the buttoned-up Enterprise. Meanwhile, O'Brien and Bashir are coming home from a mission in the Gamma Quadrant. O'Brien is complaining about a fight he had with O'Brien with his wife. I wrote down O'Brien.
What's
He
up,
was having a fight with himself. We're all fighting with ourselves because he turned their bedroom into a man cave. But Bashir has his back. It's interesting because both of us have dealt with that before. Mm-hmm. With your wife and my ex-wife, like both actresses, they disappear for a long time, and maybe you do rearrange things a bit.
Yeah, or she gives me crap because in order to give her the space in the bedroom, I created the studio. The studio, which she's like, oh, now I got a beanbag, now I got this. And Keith, what do I find out when I come home? She's in the studio, sitting in the beanbag, watching TV. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Not so bad, is it? But, come on.
Yeah, well, yeah, but like, she got half of a bedroom and you got a whole studio.
She got the whole bedroom. She gets everything she wants. She was mad that I'm going to the baseball game. And I'm like, would you like to come to the baseball game? Would you like to take a day off of your off-Broadway job and come to a baseball game? And she's like, no. I was like, well, then why can't I go by myself? Let's litigate this here on the air, Keith.
Wow. Okay. Well, should I start by having your back, and then we have a colossal fight for the rest of the episode?
But then we'll come to a tentative
Sort of?
ceasefire at the end. Yeah.
I mean, but to be fair, most of our friendship is a tentative ceasefire.
Yeah, that's a good point. But you know what? Let's not play squash on Monday. Maybe Wednesday.
Maybe Wednesday, because I don't want to exercise. All right. So O'Brien wonders why she can't be more like a man. And they're about to start singing Gilbert and Sullivan, I think. Then they discover a mysterious power reading. It could be a ship in trouble on a planet. And they're, hey, we're really far from Dominion territory, so we might as well check it out. And of course, they are hit by a plasma field and have to crash land on the planet. We see a little bit of the shuttle crash landing. Then we get out on a foresty planet, and out of the air comes the Jem Hadar. And that is, that's a pretty good teaser.
Definitely. And we also got like one of the, so the like, I wish you were a man line is almost cringy, but somehow avoids being cringy. But then it's wiped away because you get one of the best lines of the episode where he's like, oh, I didn't crash. It was like a married couple fight. He's like, oh, I didn't crash land. Good enough for you? Why don't I try it? Would you like me to try it again? It was a good line.
Yeah, no, I mean, like,
Their romance has really, it was so annoying in first, and then it's become such a kind of special little
Isn't it
thing.
fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's his work wife.
Yeah.
And but we know a little thing about being work spouses.
A little thing. we're straight up common law at this point.
For sure. So we are O'Brien and Bashir. I'm definitely O'Brien. You're definitely Bashir. All right. So So in Act 1, O'Brien and Bashir are taken prisoner.
God, what a great Halloween costume if you and I did anything social in our lives.
That no one would get?
Yeah.
Well, look,
no one gets our enterprise anyway.
I mean, that's true. Look, somebody might be coming up with some new custom figures of us as
Keith
O'Brien
as O'Brien, Mike as Bashir. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Come on, that's pretty good. So,
wait, is that real, or did you just make that up?
No one might become, because we talked about it. Remember?
No.
What
Mike as Tosk?
Michael McDonald is known for. All right. Anyway,
look how good the Defiant looks there.
I know. It's like that. It's the intro. I try to make you watch every time, but you don't.
You know what I decided to do on the watch longs, Keith? You don't, because you don't watch them. But
you're right.
To respect
I'm not a patron.
To respect myself and to respect your wishes, I watch it on 4x speed. I don't fast forward it. I watch it with sound at 4x speed.
That sounds about right. That definitely is like the Micist solution to all things.
And then I delete it from the Dropbox afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Then you delete the entire Dropbox so it doesn't take up virtual space, which isn't real. Anyway, can we talk about the episode? The Jem Hadar start interrogating them, but they really just let us know that they already know most of the information, which
scary.
Is like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
They plan to execute O'Brien first because he's more experienced in combat. And they assume that Bashir is worthless because he's into science, which of course the Jem Hadar are not. Meanwhile, on Deep Space Nine, Worf tries to rat out Odo for not arresting Quark. But Cisco has his back. He encourages Worf's security vigilance, but security ain't your job anymore. You're here to coordinate Starfleet activity. Bashir and O'Brien are in the cave in the same security field that we saw in Season 2. Nice little continuity there. Bashir can tell that something is making the Jem Hadar nervous. Bashir thinks they need a doctor, and O'Brien immediately says, "Don't help them. Whatever weakens them gives us a better chance for survival."
I thought it was a great beat because... Who's my boy who played Tosk? What's his name again? McDonald? Farmer McDonald?
Bobby
McDonald.
Bobby McDonald.
Bobby McDonald, his first take when Bashir says he's a doctor is so subtle, but overt enough that I clocked it. And I was like, oh, it sounds like they need a doctor. I mean, I guess the title of the episode kind of helped with that. But
it's a little doctory.
Yeah. But anyway, well, it's the Hippocratic Oath is that if someone is in need, you have to help them, right? You have to do everything in your power to keep them alive. So I thought it was very subtle, and so when that beat came, already the foundation is set for two very different approaches to this ostensibly prison combat situation.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a terribly Star Trek premise, right? And having this debate and putting two of our heroes on opposite sides of a debate with pretty good points from both of them. So the Jem Hadar comes and grabs Bashir. He brings him to
Gilligan Island.
Takes him to Gilligan's Island, and where he's set up a makeshift lab and says, "You're going to work here." He needs Bashir to create what we now know is named Ketracel White, the enzyme that all Jem Hadar are dependent on. The leader of the Jem Hadar, Goran, explains that the Vorta control the Ketracel White, and that they have come to this planet to escape the Vorta.
And the Vorta are the founders, or is a different thing?
No, the Vorta are we've seen them a couple of times. They're sort of like the middlemen.
Oh
So
yeah, they were on the ship that one time.
Yeah. So you have
They're weird
you
looking.
have the weird looking middlemen,
Yeah.
right? We're gonna find out much more about them as we move forward, but yeah. So the Dominion setup, you have the founders, i.e., Odo's people. You have the Vorta as the sort of like the store manager, and then you have the Jem Hadar as the soldiers. So these Jem Hadar want to leave the Dominion. They want more of a life than one as a slave, essentially, which they are. They only have enough white to survive another 5 days, and they want to break the addiction. And Goran knows it's possible because he is free of the drug. He crash landed here 3 years ago and survived 35 days without white. Then, after he was rescued, he decided to come back here with his men. He then shows Bashir that all of his men who are going through severe withdrawal
Get down.
from the Ketracel white, which is really interesting to see the Jem Hadar being vulnerable in this way. And we talk more about it as we go there, and we've mentioned it before how ingenious a control system the Ketracel white is. Evil, but also ingenious.
So
Bashir,
but it's important to know going forward, because there's one bit of the subplot that I kind of on first watch didn't think too much about, and so on this kind of jaunt through the plot summary again, I want to make note of is that the other Jem Hadar with him here also made a conscious choice to escape the Vorta.
Yeah.
So the decisions they'll make later, there's sort of blurred lines between is it a vote of no confidence in their leader, or is it the drug talking? There's still a lot more questions raised here than answers, but in those questions we get some answers, or maybe some potential answers to a bigger thing, which I think makes the episode stronger for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it is, they were genetically developed to be mindless killing machines, but as is true with all things, well, maybe not as mindless as you think, but certainly battling their programming versus
I hate
their
to
experiences.
Get ahead of ourselves, but I have to make the point now. What we're getting a little bit in this episode is what we wanted it seems to me like what we've been asking from the Gorn in Strange New Worlds. Like,
right?
Are they just mindless killing monsters, or are there nuance? Is there nuance and character development with them? We didn't get that there.
I thought about our conversation about the Gorn while watching this episode.
Yeah, me too. Because this is it done very well.
This is exactly what you were asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why Deep Space Nine is Deep Space Nine, kids. So, anyway, Bashir agrees to help, and Goran says, I lied to this is what Keith types really fast.
Mommy.
I liked my mommy. It didn't have a mommy. Jem Hadar says, I lied to my men, and we have a lot less Ketracel white than they know. So clock is ticking. Meanwhile, back in the station, we have a meeting that talks about the Klingons being aggressive all over the quadrant to reassert themselves after the embarrassment of not being able to take Deep Space Nine. Gowron is still hanging on to power by pretending he won and declaring victory and bigfooting around the galaxy, kind of like Putin. They're looking for a chance to start another fight, which it's such a subtle little quick conversation they have there, but it is so honest about what happens constantly all throughout human history. I mean, you have these dictators, you have these authoritarians, and they are pretty vulnerable, and so they have to be aggressive in order to hold on to their seat. I mean, a lot of people speculate that's why Putin invaded Ukraine, was to he thought it was going to make him more powerful. Oops. Anyway, so the Klingons are kind of dangerous, going around spoiling for a fight. Worf pulls Odo aside and rats him out about something else. And rats Quark out about something else. And Odo is like, stop pissing on my tree. Later that night, O'Brien and Bashir pretend to work while O'Brien fashions a weapon. They plan to zap the guard and make a run for it. And they play a little play along of the condescending officer game for the guard. Garan comes up to check, and Bashir lies badly about the progress that he's making. Then the guard notices the weapon and accidentally zaps his buddy. Uh-oh. That didn't work.
So has Bashir up to this point, actually been just slow playing?
I think so, yes.
So he hasn't actually started his research yet?
I don't think so.
Which I guess makes sense, because in the next scene after this threat here, he's actually made some progress.
Right. So
and is a little more invested.
Yeah, I think he's at this point following what O'Brien wants to do.
So if he had just started right away, he might have actually made a breakthrough, because he was pretty close. Seems like he got pretty close.
Maybe?
It is ambiguous how close he got at the end.
I don't know how close he got, but I don't know. We'll have to see. Good question. What do you folks think? All right. So Garan makes his guard not kill O'Brien, and Bashir tries to heal the wounded Jem Hadar. But he's got a torn knee, and they can't, he's like every NFL player this season. He's blown out his knee and can no longer stand. So he says that he should be killed to help the rest of his men. We're learning a little bit more about how the Jem Hadar function. But Garan says we're here to be free of the Vorta rules. So if your death can benefit the group, you die. Back on Deep Space Nine, Worf can't give up his need to bother Quark. So he sneaks into the bar late at night to watch Quark close up. Time passes, and Quark eventually meets with his contact to do some sort of transaction. Worf goes straight to Odo and demands to know why Quark wasn't arrested. Odo once again says, piss off. I think fairly. Poor Odo. Like, every Federation officer that has ever come to the station has butted heads with Odo because of the way Deep Space Nine works. But we're going to talk more about it later, which I think is...
Yeah, I mean, like, Odo was able to find a meeting of the minds with Garak. So you'd think he and Worf share some similarities in the security department, why they couldn't be pals. You feel like he could have maybe let him in here, but maybe it's so undercover that he just had to keep it need to know.
Well, I think Odo is territorial to start with, and I think he's defensive. I think he is actively defensive because the Federation is always trying to undermine and replace him. And like, he understands the dynamics of the station and how different it is from a starship. Well, and Cisco will talk about it later, but I think his first instinct is to tell him to piss off and then eventually break through, which I think is pretty human for a goo person. So back on the planet,
of which I have an action figure. So
you sure do.
Yeah.
Back on the planet, Bashir starts doing some actual research, inspecting Garan, whose body is mysteriously able to produce the white. He brings up Odo, talking about how they discovered a Jem Hadar baby on the station. And Garan says he's never seen a founder. They're almost a myth to the Jem Hadar, and that the founders are gods to the Jem Hadar, but their gods never talk to them. They only want them to fight and die for them. I thought that was very interesting.
It's a great little treatise on religion. Mm-hmm. Religion as a, I guess, with a pejorative view, right? Like as a control device, as a civilization control device, which I tend to mostly agree with, but that's neither here nor there. It's you see all of the checks and balances of control being imposed upon the Jem Hadar. It's impossible not to, and I think purposefully, to elicit a lot of sympathy for the Jem Hadar here, from a lot of different angles,
Yeah, no, and I think it's sort of any authoritarian structure, right? Where you have some mysterious figure at the top, using everybody else's pawns. But
Also,
it is interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Just from a design element, twofold. One, if you haven't noticed it, our friends on YouTube, the effects and the makeup and because that's a mask, that's prosthetics, right? And somehow he's able to give it a pretty powerful performance through this mask. And some people, I think it was the special effects guy. I read the companion this week, and he was saying that, or it was Renee saying, some actors, unfortunately, but understandably, get lost behind the prosthetics, but some pop through it. And like if you pull up, I don't have one prepared, but if you pulled up a side by side with Tosk here, this guy, you can tell which actor it is, who it is through that prosthetic.
It's just eyes. It's all the eye work, and it's something Renee certainly would understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good creature design. I think the Jem Hadar design as a bad guy is probably the best, like, adversary design other than the Borg. I think they're really, really cool. Anyway, so it is really interesting to think about the founders setting themselves up as deities to the Jem Hadar. Bashir tells O'Brien that Goran is questioning his entire belief system, but O'Brien says, "Look, you're just being manipulated." You know, he knows that the Federation doctors are designed to be empathetic, and so that is, you're just being played, buddy. But Bashir believes Goran and wants to help him, and he thinks if he can help the Jem Hadar start thinking for themselves, this would leave the Dominion without a fighting force, which is really interesting. But O'Brien says, or they could maraud around the galaxy with nobody to control them. We can't risk helping them. And I think they both have really interesting points here. And thus the ethical question of the episode.
There is a strategic advantage, though. Even there's a third element we never discussed, which I thought was which popped to my mind. Yes, it's possible that not all the Jem Hadar would be sympathetic. We can't. It's quite. I would say it's a reaching hypothesis that if we take them off the drug, that would make them kind-hearted. Right? There's
right.
That's a leap. However, if we separate them, if we give them the option to separate from the founders, from the Vorta, the founders lose some footing and may need some help or assistance or whatnot. So it would create discord, which is more advantageous to us strategically, militarily wise. But I don't know. I think O'Brien's like, we got to get the hell out of here. That's position one.
I mean, it's funny because I was making the Putin references. Like it feels a lot like the Wagner forces, like these sort of like super soldiers that were just decapitated. What do they do? What are they going to do? That's what they do. And like, it is, it's like the dude was evil, but also what's the chaos? What's next? You don't know. It's dangerous. So O'Brien says, don't help them, but Bashir pulls rank and orders O'Brien to help him. Yikes.
Which is literally is a power dynamic we've never seen in this relationship. O'Brien from the beginning, even remember they were like marooned on a planet together, and O'Brien was like, and he was hurt. Siddig was hurting, and so O'Brien was like, "Get your shit together, man." O'Brien's always had the kind of upper hand when it comes to.
He's always felt like the big brother.
Yeah, but here it's like a good fresh reminder, like I outrank you, brah.
Yeah. Well, and that's because O'Brien's not an officer; he's an enlisted man, which puts him below everybody who is an officer.
And you know what we learn here, Keith? O'Brien doesn't give a shit.
He does not. You know what I learned? It's amazing we were able to see this scene through all of the fake smoke that you can barely even see them. O'Brien gets another piece of equipment that Bashir wanted while he talks to another Jem Hadar in the shuttle. Neither of them, O'Brien or the Jem Hadar, thinks any of this is a good idea, which is interesting. Then O'Brien secretly gets the transporter working and is able to beam himself out of the shuttle. Clever.
So was the Jem Hadar's original, was their plan we'll get there and just like I guess the expectation was that the natural
Yeah.
environment, the ecosystem, is what will heal them.
Made it possible to kick the habit. Yes, that was his hypothesis on this. But clearly the people he brought are a little skeptical. So, but O'Brien gets out. Love it. Clever, very O'Brien solution to the problem. So in Act 3, Bashir is frustrated. He can't find anything on the planet that made it possible for Goran to be saved. They're both frustrated. Bashir postulates that maybe Goran just had a genetic mutation, and it has nothing to do with the planet itself, which I think probably is what happened there. The other Jem Hadar comes in and says O'Brien escaped. Goran says find him and bring him back alive. The Jem Hadar says if being cured makes you weak like this and not executing the prisoners, I don't want it. Oof. Bashir says, go try to save O'Brien. I won't try to escape. So he tells Goran to go out and try to save O'Brien, which is really interesting because you wonder if the mutation that genetically allows him to not be addicted to the Ketracel White might also change his philosophies, because the rest of the Jem Hadar are like, hell no, I don't want this. Whether that's nature or nurture or training, interesting. Back in Quark's, Quark and the alien make the deal. Then Worf tries to arrest them both. But then, of course, Odo ungoos and is pissed that Worf just blew his undercover operation that was going to be much more extensive than this, but Worf just blew the whole thing. In the woods, O'Brien sets a trap using his tricorder and knocks out a Jem Hadar with a snare trap thingy.
It's very Predator.
Very Predator. Well, it's very like Vietnam.
Rambo.
Then he goes back with the Jem Hadar's rifle to rescue Bashir, but Bashir says, I'm not going. No. I'm telling you, I'm not going. They continue arguing. Bashir says, just go. Leave me here. And then O'Brien, like Kira with the house, destroys his research and says, we're going back together. Goran appears and takes them both back as prisoners. Then he marches them through the woods back to their shuttle, and they discover the other Jem Hadar there. Goran shoots him and tells O'Brien and Bashir to go. He's going to stay behind, and he knows that O'Brien will understand. He's their commander, and he can't leave them behind to die.
He has to kill them.
Yeah. He's the more humane thing to do is to kill them in battle than let them slowly die of withdrawal, which is dark, but I think probably true. So later in Sisko's office, he's tinkering with the fancy clock from Dramatis Personae. Worf goes in to rat himself out for blowing Odo's operation, but of course Sisko already knows. Odo didn't mention him in his report, which is a classy move by Odo there. But, Sisko knows. Sisko explains that Starfleet officers often struggle to learn the unofficial rules of the station. It's very different from a starship. Deep Space Nine has more shades of gray, and Quark is one of those shades of gray. And Quark has his own set of rules, and he follows them diligently. Once you understand them, you'll understand him. You'll fit in, just give it time. Which I really liked this Worf storyline. Like it's not really, there's not a lot to it.
Yeah.
But I think it addresses picking up this character from one show and dropping him into another show that is very, very different.
Yes, I think that the plot line is very astutely meta commentary.
Yeah, I mean it is it's almost breaking the fourth wall. Just like, of course, Worf coming from the super uptight, super, very clear, very well lit Enterprise D coming to this sort of Wild Westy kind of a place. He's gonna have a hard time fitting in it at the start.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because I think it's a fairly insignificant plot line in general. But I will say that don't sleep on Dorn's performance again, because he's being asked to really recreate a character, and so he's playing all kinds of insecurity and defensiveness and a lot of very nuanced colors that weren't really demanded of him before. So it's cool to see.
Oh yeah, I mean he's being given so much more interesting material to work with than he ever did on the Enterprise. But you're right. He's coming in at his most vulnerable, at his most insecure, and he deals with his insecurity like any Klingon would, by bigfooting around in the same way that Gowron is. Right? He's just sort of had a defeat. He's feeling vulnerable. He's feeling sort of, insecure. So he's stomping around the quadrant in the same way that Worf is stomping around Deep Space Nine.
But do they know that? Where do they? I don't know if it's a wormhole. It's a wormhole. Where do they think they are? O'Brien and Bashir. Everybody else. Nobody else seems concerned that they're somewhere else for a couple periods. For a couple extra days. They were supposed to be back, clearly.
That is a pretty fair wormhole. Although we don't know the exact timeline here.
Yeah, but like, I don't care where they're coming back from. There would be some sort of communications being like, hey, we're going to be back on Thursday.
Right. Well, and if we're to believe that these things are happening in the same timeline, then yes, that's definitely a wormhole. But this Worf thing could have happened in the week that they were gone.
Yeah, but they would show you would expect some sort of a delineation that there's different time frames happening.
No, I think that's a wormhole. Yeah. I think that's totally a wormhole.
Because Ben at his clock is showing he is got not a care in the world.
No, he's playing with his clock.
Outside. He escaped purgatory. He's just like clock time, clock.
Yeah. Usually when you play with your clock in your office, you should lock the door. But
don't worry about it. Tell nobody.
No, indeed. You know that Klingons apparently have two? Anyway, that's my understanding. So back on the shuttle, O'Brien and Bashir have a tense conversation. O'Brien has disobeyed Bashir's orders and condemned all of those Jem Hadar to death. And O'Brien says, yep, I did all of that to save your life. And I think they both have some points here.
Great twist. If you think about it, really. It's as a twist on the title of the episode, right? Is the oath that Bashir had to help them because they were in need, or is the oath that O'Brien did what he had to do to save Bashir's life?
Right.
Or clearly both.
How do you define harm? Right? Like, to the universe, which one of their tactics with the Jem Hadar would have created more harm? Don't know. We really don't know. But
it's also the immediate versus the large, right? Like, yes, in the immediate, O'Brien did what was necessary to create the circumstances to get Bashir and them out safely. But at the same time, and this is what I want to talk about mostly in this end of the episode. If you are facing the Nazis, right?
Right.
Ostensibly the biggest bad. Any tactical advantage, any potential kryptonite that you could discover is extraordinary. And to sacrifice that is taking a pretty big risk, man.
Well, and in this case, like, by releasing the Jem Hadar from what controls them, it's not really a way to kill them. It's a way to kill their command structure. But we have no idea what the consequences of that would be, which is sort of what their debate is. It is the humanitarian thing to do because they are essentially slaves.
Yes. Yeah, that's the big picture. But I'm just thinking even on the more micro scale, like if they can somehow, what's the word where you sort of work backwards of a technology and like to figure it out?
Reverse engineer.
Yeah, reverse engineer how the founders created the Jem Hadar, or at least their molecular structure. They could have done with the little kid too. You could figure out kind of how their tech works.
Oh yeah,
there's so much. It's the reason we wanted Niels Bohr, right? Like, give me the Germans, give me those.
Yeah. No, I mean, like if the Federation had the ability, had the choice, right? Had understood the technology well enough to turn it on or turn it off, and what you could do with that, who knows what you would end up doing, but that would be incredibly important for the Federation to find out.
Well, let's put a pin on this. So they have a tete-a-tete and they say, you know what? No, we're not playing squash Monday. We'll play maybe next week.
Yeah, which I liked. Mm-hmm. I liked very much the leaving it tense.
Yeah.
That's because that, with hope, they're going to be fine, but they're not going to be fine for a while. And I think that makes sense. All right. What do you say we move along home and finish up Hippocratic Oath? AlamarEmmys, count to 4. AlamarEmmys, then one more. AlamarEmmys, it's AlamarEmmys. Okay. Well, you've already identified one of them pretty well, and that is wormholes in the plot.
Yeah, there's that one, which is the one that kind of wrung me the whole time. I was like, why is nobody looking for them? Why are we not?
Nobody seems to care much.
Mm-hmm. And also, I guess you could, to be fair with you, that's really the only one I knew. I also had been questioning, and that's why I tried to pay more attention this time, what the agency of the other Jem Hadar people were, and I think that we're done a little bit of a disservice that we don't get to know much about them. Like, what was the point of them? Because ostensibly, if from my kind of read, if they don't, clearly they have to die, right? They can't go back now because they went AWOL from their command or their whatever, their front. So they're kind of out to die anyway.
They're dead either way, yeah.
Yeah, so it's unclear what, even if they mutiny against the main guy, what they're going to achieve. They can't.
Well, I think they would say, hey, our commander went crazy, and so we killed him, and we've come back.
Yeah, I guess that's
and
fair.
So I think they would be able to return, I think.
It's quite possible that's what's going to happen. Like, that's more the most likely scenario, unless we are to believe that he's such a badass that he's going to kill them all easy. Well, I guess they're weakened, right? Because they need the drug.
Well, I don't know if they can get off the planet.
Yeah.
Because we don't really know. Because I thought that was
an interesting storyline. I think like strategic, but I guess that plays to the strength of the episode, which is I'm very curious now about what makes the Jem Hadar tick. Clearly, there's a lot more to them than we first thought or gave them credit for, and so I'm super interested in that, and I hope we revisit more of it, to be honest with you.
And we know that they do have a command structure amongst themselves as opposed to just the Vortas in charge, and so and they have their own, we're beginning to unravel their own sort of ethics, their own ethos, their own rules amongst themselves, how they see themselves individually versus part of their squad. So
because the sci-fi of it is really cool. I was thinking, like, if you think of the Jem Hadar coming off like a conveyor belt, right? They're as babies. You got to imagine they've got some tech that can probably catch these anomalies.
Yeah.
Most likely they just slaughter them at birth, right? He just somehow slipped through the cracks, or it was latent and they didn't catch it and it developed late. There's so many possible sci-fi sort of narratives with this that are super cool. So I hope that it's not just a one-off, because if it's a one-off, it really cheapens the effect of it, I think, strategically. But I don't know. That's the only major wormhole, was like, why is nobody looking for O'Brien? Or at least saying, like, where are they?
That's weird, because I don't get the sense that it was more than like 24 hours extra, but they would have been in communication constantly because of the relay that we put in.
And that's our head doctor.
And our chief engineer.
So yeah.
They're two regular cast members. You got to keep ties on them. All right, so I don't have anything else that you didn't say, so let's do our best moment.
Man, there's so much good stuff. You know what? Man, I should be more specific, but I will say, I've often find myself all but saying out loud, I don't think Alexander Siddig is as skilled an actor often as some of his castmates, which makes him stand out as. I don't think he's bad, but often I think he's the weakest link as an actor. However, when he's good, when he's on, he's really good. I think he's excellent in this episode. I think
I do too.
When he's defiant, that scene where he's defiant to the chief and he's like, I know what I'm doing. I have a gut read. I've followed your gut many times. Here I've got a gut read and I'm your boss, or I'm a ranking officer. I think he brings the heat, and I think he makes his points saliently, and I think it's intense, and I think it's a great performance. So I want to give him his props when he gets it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is where O'Brien starts getting traction. The character that we are going to continue to build our relationship with is this guy. Is the guy who he's very bright, but he's very passionate. He takes these moral stances. He fights for stuff, and that, like, the horny Bashir of season 1 is not who the Bashir that we will remember as Bashir, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Alex, I don't think he's bad. I think he was very young when he was cast, and I think that the experience that, going up against a Colomini, who has been an experienced stage and screen and television actor for 20 years before he got here, where this is Siddig's essentially first job. Like, I'm sure it's rubbing off.
Yeah.
Right. You're dealing with these incredibly experienced actors everywhere you are. But I think he is much better suited to this type of Dr. Bashir. The thoughtful, the passionate, the man of integrity who when given something to fight for, as opposed to just sort of like be there and be young and cocky, is a much more compelling character and a much more compelling performance.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think for me it's I think it is exactly that moment where Bashir pulls rank, because it is uncomfortable. And it is difficult, and we have to sit in the discomfort of that within their friendship. But it is also real life, and I think they both made excellent points. I think they both really had intelligent, important things to say. I thought it was just a well-written and well-performed scene.
And it's an important plot point because, and you don't see it often, right? With this much nuance. Listen. Be it a marriage, be it a partnership business-wise, be it a friendship that includes a business partnership, or you're on the job, or whatever there's all types of relationships and nuance within. But let me tell you what never happens. Successful ones are never because the two people agree all the time. That is not what forges great relationships, right? Great relationships are forged in the fire. A great example, I don't know why this popped in my head, but what show I loved, and is just like, I still love watching it as a masterpiece in so many ways of reality television show, is Mythbusters. Jamie Hyneman, Adam Savage, their partnership is so great. Their chemistry is exquisite, and they did not like each other. They were not friends.
Interesting.
But they respected each other's intelligence. They respected each other's work ethic. They respected the thing they were building together. Even when it pained one of them to do it, if you were right, you're right. So we're doing your way.
Yeah.
And if you can establish that type of respect, look, it's nice if there's a friendship on top of that. Perhaps it can blossom out of that. But at the end of the day, it's mutual respect and it's mutual care for one another. And that's what you see here. they disagree the whole freaking time about how they're going to go about it and even the outcome or what they should be doing. But here we see that it's not that they don't respect each other, it's that it's just great because you see we need to melt the armor a little bit so that the next time when we put it back in the fire, we can make it stronger.
Yeah, it's like folding a sword. Yeah, no, I mean, and I think that the being able to pass back and forth the power is how respect is really given. Because, like, to respect is really about being willing to let the other person be in charge when it's appropriate for them to be in charge. And and certainly all good friendships or relationships or partnerships need to have that ability. And like in Mike and my life, there are times outside of the K&M empire where like Mike legitimately will be the boss of me, and other times where I'll legitimately be the boss of him. And the way that we show respect to each other is like, okay, great.
Yeah.
That is our situation today. And if I'm helping Mike with his job, he's the boss of me. If he's working on something I wrote, I'm the boss of him. And that is sort of the way that works. And that's respect.
That is respect. Which
is respect.
Is something that is just like respect is it's a whole different conversation, but often the turn of phrase is that respect is earned, right? And there's a lot of truth. There's a ton of truth to that, but there are circumstances where it is implied as well. And here is an example where we'll see the ramifications of, look, the respect should be implied that Bashir he outranks him, and military ranking and such is such that you don't question it. That's why the Jem Hadar are a great example here too.
And that unquestioning hierarchical structure has a purpose. It's not just ego. There's a reason that there is a structure of command, and it is for all of our mutual benefit to have a rigid command structure.
And sometimes it's a straw. What's the straw man? I'll give you an example that we're dealing with in our current time, and I don't want to get into the weeds of it, but it's very easy to say and believe that no one is above the law, Keith. But when continually you, as like a law-abiding citizen, learn that there are many people above the law, the chinks in the armor start to show.
The whole thing breaks down.
Yeah.
Whole thing breaks down if we do not have structure. Otherwise, I'm not going to get into it. Anyway, yes, so that is my best moment. Mike, let's hand out some self-sealing stem
one of the
bolts.
only things in our society, Keith, that means anything and maintains its worth and respect are the self-sealing stem bolts.
It's gold and self-sealing stem bolts.
Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some stem bolts for you.
I think, we've said it before. For me, some of the best Deep Space Nines are things that, are really small moments and really big moments where we learn about ramifications of things and galactic movement and such. This is one I think is on a smaller scale, both things kind of, for me. And it's great sci-fi because it asks really tough questions. It observes and analyzes potential flaws in our system or in the structure that we've built. I think we are looking at a friendship and the gives and takes of mutual respect like we talked about. We're also looking at a kind of tried and true trope of the first do no harm and take care of your fellow man, be it an enemy soldier across lines or be it your best buddy who's injured or whatnot. And we look at what happens when you put that to the test and there are conflicting interests. But also for me, and those are all really cool things. And some of the best sci-fi, like we said, has no right answer, right? And even that can be analyzed. Is it a cop-out or is it great sci-fi writing because you have to weigh both sides? And I think the episode does a great job explaining both sides and leaving it to the audience to maybe not even make a choice. It maybe just come to the realization of, yeah, it's not black and white. It's all gray, baby. It's all gray. On top of that, I love that our Jem Hadar. Look, we've set up the Dominion, the Jem Hadar, as this just unstoppable force, and they've got all this high tech stuff. And I love when we learn, and they're dolloping out. So only third episode, season 4. Like, look, it's not all hunky dory over there. It's, like, there are some disgruntled soldiers working on the Death Star, right? Like, it's not.
Sure.
Some of them want to strike because they ain't getting any good food in the cafeteria, and maybe Bashir has learned something from that research, or maybe all they learned was that, hey, they're not all willing to play ball. Some of them want out, right?
They're not as mindless as we're thinking they are.
And if nothing else, that could provide hope, right? That could be like a feather in the cap of a Cisco in a really good pregame speech, right? If it's nothing but that, it's still something. So we're moving that huge plot forward a little dollop, and that is good sci-fi. Here are my weaknesses for the episode. I'll name them. One, I think the B plot, though it's kind of good for Worf, and it's kind of neat to see actually Quark, because what we never really get to see, anytime Quark has been a help to us, right? It's been by folly or by, we're going to put you in prison if you don't do this, right?
Right.
By
with a gun to your head.
Duress, yeah. Here, we realize that what we can only assume is that all along, he's been doing us little favors, some covert operations, some this. He's like Garrick, right? He's clearly a back channel in some ways. He's earning his keep, right? He's paying the vig, as we'd say.
Right.
But outside of that, it's just like it's almost unnecessary, the B plot. Like the B story. I almost feels like we could have been all A. Minor quibble, because still we learned some things. It's good for Worf, and like I said, it's good to see Quark do something different. Here's what stood out to me, and it's stupid, but it's a nit, and I'm gonna pick it. They've the Dominion, they've got all the best tech. They've got all of this. They've got all that. And yet, because of production limitations, we're on a soundstage, and so like when we're on the planet and they're like, "Here's our lab we've set up for you," it's like bad. It's hokey. It looks like Gilligan's Island. It looks like, and I guess you could be like, "Oh, well, they're crash landed on this planet." But come on, they didn't have some science gear on the ship or something. It doesn't look good.
Well, yes. However, the Dominion is going to have all of that. The Jem Hadar, they have no use for science. They don't have a sick bay.
All right, so they got 2 beakers and a couple coconuts. Whatever. It looked hokey.
Yeah.
But and it looked hokey because the makeup, the costume design of them is so good. So it's like the set dressing kind of dropped the ball on that one. So that's
fair.
All that said, my guess is probably the most kind of ho-hum-ish episode of the season, and it's still a banger, right? Because it made me think. I'm still thinking about it. I loved it. I almost wished it was a 2-parter. Like, let me learn more about the Jem Hadar. I'm into espionage and all that crap. So anyway, I think very highly of it. I say 91 self-sealing stem bolts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have good news for you. We're going to spend a lot of time exploring the Jem Hadar and all of that. So all of this. These philosophical questions, this whole world, we're going to spend a lot more time in. So, good news. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good episode. I think you're right. The Worf, the B story, I think it's necessary and good to sort of tell that story and get that piece of Worf integrating into the. I think there's just a more interesting way to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of repeated beats with, questioning Odo and thinking Quark's about, like, we've now done that several times with a couple of different people. I think that there might have been just a more interesting structure to have told that story with Worf. Like, find something a little bit more specific to Worf. Find some other way to show him butting heads with this new gray areas, than just like Quark meeting with another random alien about some random transaction that we have. By this point, we have seen that. Oh, Quark is making a deal with some shady alien like 30 times, and so I think there's just a more interesting way to tell that story. But I think it's an important story to tell. I think Sisko's sort of speech to him about like, hey, you're going to have to adjust to this because it works differently. I think his line about Quark living by his own set of rules, and once you understand them, you understand Quark. That's a great line. I think Sisko's part of that story is great. So yeah, I mean, like, yeah, okay. Structurally important. Could have used a different seasoning. I really liked the conflict between Bashir and O'Brien. I think that was both sort of philosophically interesting, to discuss what is the greater good, what are our responsibilities here. We're captors, or have been taken captive. Like, what is the right thing to do there? But I think it's also tied to their characters so specifically that it's O'Brien. It's great that it's O'Brien with that point of view because he's a war vet. He has gone through it. He has seen it. He has seen the dark sides of war. He's bringing to it some inertia from his life experience. And Bashir, the opposite. He really hasn't been. He's young. He's idealistic. He's a scientist. He's a doctor. He's thinking about it from a completely different set of lived experiences or lack of lived experiences. And so he's in a position to be more optimistic, to be more idealistic than O'Brien is. So it makes sense. They chose the right characters to lay this story on, and it makes a lot of sense. So it's all, it's all good writing. I love learning more about the Jem Hadar. I think we get some very important little nuggets of information here that they didn't put too hard of a button on, but are going to be very important moving forward, which I think is just good writing. And I think that this, I talk about storytelling inertia. This episode really benefits from the inertia that we've told, the stories that we've told getting here. So I really liked all of those pieces. Is it a banger of an episode for me? No. It's a very solid, very good episode. It's nothing like the previous episodes this season. So I think it's for me, this is a really good, average season 4 plus episode. And I'm like, okay, yeah, great, solid, nothing to write home about, but very solid. So for me, it gets 84 self-sealing stem bolts. And perhaps like you talked about recalibrating, it is maybe that's a little bit of a recalibrated number because, this is the new average.
Well, we got people handing out 101s now. I mean, everything is just off the chart. So we're going to need to figure out how it's all going to come to be.
No, but what I feel about it is like, if this is our new episode, we're doing pretty damn well. Yeah. So there you go. The IMDb ranking says this is a 7.6 out of 10. This is the 74th best episode of Deep Space Nine out of 173, so slightly above average in basic Deep Space Nine world. Up next, we are going to be talking about the episode Indiscretion. That will be fun and interesting. I can't wait to talk about it. I want to say thank you again to all of our patrons, our new and old, all the tremendous support that we've been getting. I really, really enjoyed talking through The Visitor with everybody who watched it. If you would like to continue the conversation about Hippocratic Oath, you can just leave a comment below right here on the YouTube feed. If you want us to read it, just leave us a little super thanks right there. Everybody join the Patreon. We tried to make it as almost free as possible. Just come hang out with us. It's fun. So there it is. You can check out our other shows. Look at my Star Trek Toys K&M Geekly. We have finished Strange New Worlds up until this point, but all of that is archived below if you want to see this whole thing on talking about Strange New Worlds. So there it is. Mike, that is it. We'll see you back here next week with Indiscretions. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike. Watch Deep Space Nine! Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.